Good morning. Welcome to Second Unitarian Church. My name is Curtis Smith. I am a member of the Anti-Racism Multicultural Ministry, or ARM, and my pronouns are he, him, his. Today, we are in person at the Admiral at the Lake, the 2U Sanctuary, and continue to meet virtually using Zoom. We ask everyone's indulgence for the complications of a three-part service. We're glad you are here, whichever way you are attending. If you are in the sanctuary and would benefit from hearing assistance, we have devices available as noise-canceling headphones for both adults and children with noise sensitivities. Please see our tech team in the back. We welcome people to wear masks during the service. This practice helps prevent transmission of COVID and helps us center the needs of those who are most vulnerable. We especially welcome newcomers and visitors this morning. Finding a new community and making new connections can be challenging. Please know that we're excited that you have found us here and look forward to getting to know you. If you are new to us today, please note that in the Zoom chat or mention it in person during the conversation after the service. If you would like, there are blue mugs you can use to signal to others that you would like them to come up and say hello. Speaking of coffee hour, we always welcome extra hands in the kitchen before and after coffee hour. It's a wonderful opportunity to catch up with old friends and meet new ones while lending a helping hand. Our worship today is led by Kim Warman and Jess Vogt, along with Jill Alford as worship associate. Music is provided by Jess Vogt and Carl Kennedy. Our time together requires a large group of people who make possible the worship, the music, and the technical production. They are listed in order of service, and we thank them for their ongoing care of our congregation. I have actually quite a few announcements to make this morning, but first, let's start here. The 2U Library team is excited to announce 2U Words and Wonders, an artist and author event showcasing our community's incredible literary and artistic talent on November 9th. If you are an author interested in reading a selection of your work and signing or selling your books, or an artist or a craft person looking to display and sell your creations, we want to hear from you. Contact Jennifer Kronk for more information. Join us for a special evening service in Oz Park on Wednesday, August 14th at 6 p.m. Reverend Jason and Brandon Nix will guide us through an exploration of the Wizard of Oz from a Unitarian Universalist perspective. Don't miss this opportunity to join this Don't miss this opportunity to journey with us through Oz, quite literally, as we tour each of the 4 statues in the park and reflect on their significance and how these narratives resonate with the 167-year-old legacy of compassion and justice. Then join us Sunday, August 25th at 6 p.m. for a 2U Night Out, potluck and movie night here in the sanctuary, where we will celebrate the 85th anniversary with a viewing of The Wizard of Oz, starring Judy Garland. This event follows a pay-as-you-can model. Think about what you might typically spend on a night out, whether it's dinner and a movie, a museum visit, or a drink with friends, and contribute that amount. Please see your order of service for more information and to RSVP. Finally, join your fellow 2Uers on a journey of discovery and connection as we embark on a guided tour of North Lawndale with the Mahogany Tours, Saturday, September 28th from noon to 2 p.m. Led by award-winning Chicago historian Dilla, we'll delve into the rich tapestry of Black Chicago history on this bus tour through the neighborhood. In spirit of Unitarian Universalist values, we seek to learn from and connect with diverse communities that make up our city. This tour is an opportunity to broaden your understanding, foster relationship, and engage in meaningful dialogue. The tour is open to everyone, and the cost is $45 per person. Space is limited, So reserve your spot, and you have to go to actually Chicago Mahogany Tours to reserve your spot and select North Lawndale, and then select September 28th. But there will be more information coming out forward, and then you can follow that as well. I now welcome Jill Althage to lead our call to worship.
We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation, a community of children, youth, and adults, a people of many beliefs and traditions, bound not by the specific list of things we believe, but the values we share. Whether you're joining us for the first time or for the 1000th time, you are welcome here. Whether you believe in God some of the time, all of the time, or none of the time, you are welcome here. Whatever your race, whomever you love, whichever way you move in the world, however much money is in your pocket, you are welcome here. I invite you, when you feel ready, to take a breath in and out. As the music begins, let us enter into our service together.
Young people search for a true way to live, from Tibet to Timbuktu. They look to their elders for guidance, counting on you. The children of generations to come are counting on you. Every human flower about to bloom is counting on you. Every child arrives with gifts to give, hoping, counting on you. Alive in the power of childhood dreams, counting on you. Asking you to live true to your heart and soul. Asking you to come through, counting on you. Counting on you. From this moment on to infinity, the children are counting on you. In this fresh new track to eternity, the children are counting on you. Every child to sit at life's table is hoping, counting on you. To give of yourself as you're able, the children are counting on you. Asking you to live true to your heart and soul. Asking you to come through, counting on you. Counting on you. Asking you to live true to your soul's purpose. Asking Morning. I am Kim Warman. I use she, her pronouns, and I am here as a member and also from Milwaukee right now. In just a moment, Zella here in the sanctuary. Is Zella here? Yes, thank you. And Harris at the Admiral will light our chalices, the symbol of our faith. We light this chalices this morning with a call to worship Rise by Gretchen Haley, which we will all participate in after the lighting. We do this first? Yes, okay. So, you are the congregation. There will be words up here, and you will be participating in this lighting. Jaden.
Because the tides are rising, to this moment,
to this day,
to this life,
this place in the world,
that is yours and ours,
because the earth remains,
our only home,
fellow travelers,
its only hope,
wholeness,
salvation,
before the mystery
before the Big Bang,
of this infinite universe,
still takes notice of us,
still holds us,
connects us,
for forever.
with gratitude
This chance
to be a part of it all.
to give back,
Life,
past,
future,
everywhere,
as one. Come, let's worship together.
I now invite you to rise in body or in spirit as we sing our opening hymn, number 298, Wake Now My Senses. We will be singing verse 1, 2, and 3. And we will wait till Zella lights the candles. Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. sing our congregational hymn, number 123, Spirit of Life.
So I ask you to come up if you're young or young at heart. Everybody may sit down if you're not coming on up. We have a time for all ages. The book is a little small, but there will be images up here. Okay. Here is the story of the great forest that caught on fire. You can see it here, but there'll be larger pictures up there. The terrible fire raged and burned. All of the animals were afraid and fled from their homes. The elephant and the tiger, the beaver and the bear all ran, and above them the birds flew in a panic. They huddled at the edge of the forest, and they watched. All of the creatures gathered, except one. Only Duk-Duk-Dia, the little hummingbird, would not abandon the forest. Duk-Duk-Dia flew quickly to the stream. She picked up a single drop of water in her beak. Duk-Duk-Dia flew back and dropped the water on the fire. Again, she flew to the stream and brought back another drop. And so she continued back and forth, back and forth. The other animals watched Duk-Duk-Dia's tiny body fly against the enormous fire, and they were frightened. They called out to the little hummingbird, warning her of the dangers of the smoke and of the heat. "What can I do?" sobbed the rabbit. "The fire is much too hot." "There's too much smoke," howled the wolf. "My wings will burn. My beak is too small," cried the owl. But the little hummingbird persisted. She flew to and fro, picking up more water and dropping it, bead by bead, onto the burning forest. Finally, the big bear said, "Little Duk-Duk, what are you doing?" Without stopping, Duk-Duk-Dia looked down at all of the animals, and she said, "I am doing what I can."
Thank you. You might go ahead and continue on to your seats. Thank you for coming up and sharing this story. There will be a copy of this that is now in the library. So if anybody wants that, there's another copy. Okay. And now, okay. How do I, okay, excuse. Thank you. Each year, we all make a commitment, a pledge, to support the ministry of our church. In addition to this contribution, each Sunday we take a collection so that we can share with those doing justice beyond our church community. While we are unable to come all together in person, you can still share your resources. To make your contribution, you can send a text to the number which will appear on the screen after our plate share speaker, or it can be found in your order of service. You can also drop off cash or a check in the donation box located in the Palmer Room directly to your right. I believe that's when you're exiting on the right. For the month of July, we are sharing our plate with Unitarian Universalist Action Network, UUNI. On the last Sunday of each month, which is where we are, we hear from a committee or ministry of 2U. Today, we will hear from the Anti-Racism Multicultural Ministry, ARM, sharing about their work in the church. Curtis.
Well, hello again. My name is Curtis Smith. I am the member of the Anti-Racism Multicultural Ministry, or affectionately known as ARM, here at Second Unitarian Church. I am very excited to share the important work we are doing to create a more welcoming and equitable community. Within our congregation, meaningful conversations about anti-racism and inclusion are happening in two groups. The Diverse Revolutionary Unitarian Universalist Multicultural Ministry, or DRUM, facilitated by Belinda Brown, centers the voices and experiences of BIPOC individuals. And then also the White Allies groups, facilitated by Pip Paris, provides a space for white members to learn and grow in their allyship. Both groups meet separately on the fourth Sunday of each month to reflect, learn, and discuss how we can collectively build a church, a congregation where everyone feels a true sense of belonging. Why does this work matter? Racism harms individuals and communities daily. Our commitment to racial equality, equity is a moral imperative. We believe that fostering, understanding, dismantling racism, and celebrating diversity are essential to living our Unitarian Universalist values. Our main goals, and these are just sort of highlighted goals: empowering our congregation with listening and learning skills, opposing racism in all its forms, creating an anti-racist church and congregation, holding ourselves accountable to improving the experiences of BIPOC individuals within our community, continuing this important work with compassion, even when it is challenging. This journey is not always easy, but it is incredibly rewarding. We invite all members and friends of Second Unitarian Church to join us in this transformative work. How can you participate? One is to join DRUM or the White Allies group. Choose the group that best aligns with your identity. Attend our monthly ARM meetings, which happens on the third Tuesday of every month virtually, where we discuss anti-racism strategies and deepen our connections to each other and the vital work ahead. Participate in ARM's Social Justice Ministry Reading Group. Every year, we will explore a book on race, oppression, liberation, social justice, usually starting at late fall or early winter. Engage in peace-building circles and community conversations. These are events that foster dialogue, understanding, and healing. And one of them, of course, is the Chicago Mahogany Tours that we invite people to join. So please stay tuned for announcements about upcoming events and opportunities to get involved. Thank you for listening. And certainly we are hosting coffee hours and we will be there. And certainly let's talk a little bit more about the work in Second Unitarian Church. Thank you so much.
Now I invite you to join me in reading our offertory words. The words are printed in your order of service and are on the screen. This church is the community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. As we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm it and enable its exhibiting in the larger world around us. The offering will now be generously given and gratefully received.
I invite you now into the spirit of prayer and meditation. Let us start by breathing together, taking a breath in and out. We begin in thanks, thankful for the breath in our lungs, for the beauty of our earth and the strength of this community. We hold in our hearts those who care for family in ill health, those who grieve with grief or chronic pain, those struggling with addiction or illness seen and unseen. We are with you. For parents and teachers and all those whose primary spiritual practice is caring for children, we are with you. We pray for our neighbors in prison, for those who are struggling to stay afloat in the midst of poverty, for migrants who are fleeing and seeking, finding new homes in our city among many. We are with you. We pray for all those living in harm's way. We pray for our planet and commit to work that will lead us away from the harms of climate change. And remember that we are together in that process. We pray that wisdom, compassion, and empathy guide the leaders of our world. May they and we be instruments of a just and lasting peace. Our lives are blessed by those who knowingly, with curiosity and courage, face their final days. Into this shared silence, I invite you now to speak the name of anyone you wish to lift up into the loving support of this community. With our deepest compassion, let us hold in our hearts those named and unnamed, those remembered and those forgotten. Let it be so. Amen. Blessed be.
During our ritual of lighting candles for our joys and concerns, we want to continue to take care of one another. In the 2U sanctuary, you are invited to come forward and light a candle. As you end your time of contemplation and candle lighting, we invite you to use the hand sanitizer available. For those at the Admiral, I invite you to come forward to take a pebble from one bowl, hold it tightly, putting your energy into the stone, and then, knowing your joys and sorrows to be shared by this community, let it go lightly into the other bowl. For those of us on Zoom, join us by sharing your joys and concerns in our chat window, and I will light a candle to represent your celebrations and sorrows. We hold all of these joys, celebrations, sorrows, and struggles close to our hearts.
Our first reading this morning is written, is written by Elizabeth Bashard in her 2021 book, Parenting in a Changing Climate. Climate change will shape the experience of parenthood and caregiving for all of us moving forward. Anxiety and grief will inevitably be our companions as we watch the world we know and we knew change form. But climate change also offers us the opportunity to become something new, both individually and collectively. If we are willing to accept our responsibility to take climate change on behalf of our children, even as our hands are shaking and our hearts are breaking, something new will be born. The outer appearance of a transition, a country embroiled in political divisions and strife, a tiny tomb-like chrysalis, is no indication of what might emerge on the other side.
Our second reading is by American spiritual teacher and poet Mark Nepo. It is a poem titled Adrift. Everything is beautiful, and I am so sad. This is how the heart makes a duet of wonder and grief. The light spraying through the lace of the fern is as delicate as the fibers of memory forming their web around the knot in my throat. The breeze makes the birds move from branch to branch, as this ache makes me look for those I've lost in the next room, in the next song, in the laugh of the next stranger. In the very center, under it all, what we have that no one can take away and all that we've lost face each other. It is there that I'm adrift, feeling punctured by a holiness that exists inside everything. I am so sad, and everything is beautiful. Thank you, Carl. On the summer solstice this past June, I had promised my 5-year-old Noah a full moon firefly walk at dusk, So on that evening, long after his usual bedtime, he burst out of the screen door, barefoot and excited. I could hear him say softly, "Ooh, fireflies," looking out over the backyard. Then he rushed to put his sandals on. He went down the stairs to the grass with soft footfalls. "I love you, fireflies," he said, slowly dancing around, waving his arms. We tried for a bit to capture fireflies in our hands with no success. Then Noah picked up a small stick. "I'm trying to get them to land on my stick," he said proudly, arm outstretched. I pursed my lips to keep my skepticism to myself. I thought a firefly couldn't possibly choose to alight on a small stick held aloft by a child. But then, sure enough, a firefly landed. I captured a photo, and in it, Noah's smiling broadly in the dusky glow of the sunset, cross-eyed looking at that little lit-up firefly on the end of his stick. He's holding it in front of his face. He was delighted, but not nearly as shocked as I was. Of course, the child knows and expects the insect will land. I've been thinking about this experience as we've been planning this service, coming back to it in my mind, grinning as I recall the delight of my child in the simple pleasures of nature. I find similar joy in watching my 1.5-year-old Maya pluck a fresh tomato from the plant and plop it straight into her mouth, her eyes getting wide at the burst of flavor. But watching my children enjoy nature touches my heart in other ways too. It makes me anxious about the future, anxious for a nature that my children may not be able to experience in the same way when they're older. Our changing global climate means we in Chicago can expect hotter, wetter summers, warmer, drier winters, and earlier springs and later falls with more unseasonably warm days, and stronger storms all year long. This past February and March, on those days above 60 or even 70 degrees, you might recall, I went outside in shirt sleeves with the kids, simultaneously reveling in the sunshine and warmth after winter, but also feeling an anxiety creep up into my chest about this being the new normal. I worry. Will rising temperatures make places like Chicago unbearable during July and August in the future? Will air pollution from wildfires out west make us stay indoors for days or even weeks at a time, even when it's not so hot, like last summer? If and when my children have their own children in 30 years, will there be fireflies for my grandchildren to enjoy? Will there be winter snow for them to build forts in and go sledding? In Elizabeth Bichard's Parenting in a Changing Climate, from which our first reading was taken, she poses many questions for the reader. One that has stuck with me since reading is, how could I bear to teach my children to fall in love with a world that would inevitably break their hearts? Parenting in a changing climate, Bichard continues, requires that we embrace the messiness and complexity of the situation we're in, and that we walk through uncharted territory with open hearts. Open hearts. Opening our hearts to love of our children, love of nature, the love I feel because my children love nature. Letting love be the salve to the worries I feel about the changing climate. That's what an open heart means. Embracing this love amidst the anxiety about the climate is not only something I do in my parenting. I teach sustainability to undergraduate and graduate students in my job as a professor at DePaul University. I'm an interdisciplinary environmental scientist, which means that in my research and teaching, I use both social science and natural science methods. So I train my students how to gather data on the species and sizes of trees and where the trees grow, but also to ask questions of people and conduct surveys to learn about communities and how people interact with trees. Of course, we learn the facts of climate change, how it works, the urban heat island effect. We look at maps describing the inequitable distribution of tree cover as it aligns with hotspots in the city. But in addition to these hard skills, I've also become convinced of the importance of the softer things, the emotional literacy and how to have tough conversations that are so necessary for achieving the change we need in this world. How to deal with the emotional aspects of climate change is not something I've always taught to college students. It wasn't until a student broke down crying and actually needed to leave my class that I fully realized that I was not preparing them to deal with the scientific facts in a healthy way, much less empower and inspire students to go out and solve environmental problems. After doing a bunch of learning, I changed the way I was teaching. Today, in my classes, I invite students into a discussion about the emotional dimensions of climate change. Students share feelings of grief, hopelessness, anger, frustration, numbness, sometimes distancing and compartmentalizing these feelings away from their school learnings or other things they do. We talk about how we can translate these feelings into energy for action, how we acknowledge the fullness of our emotions while we work to change the default narrative on climate change from one of the inevitable chaos and breakdown to a narrative of transformation, possibility, justice, and flourishing for all. How do we stand true to our feelings without letting these feelings paralyze us? One way is to find solace in aligning our actions with our values. This is something we as Unitarian Universalists talk a lot about. But what action looks like from a climate perspective is different for every individual and every family. So, because I'm up here, what are the climate actions that I take as a UU and 2U parent? Well, one climate action for me is teaching my kids to love nature and understand how amazing it is. Learning the names for the inconceivable variety of life around us every day is vitally important. Names help demonstrate value. Earlier this July, we grew a velvety soft, bright green caterpillar we found on the carrot tops in our garden into a black swallowtail butterfly that we then released. The surprisingly large plants growing from cracks in the sidewalk, we've learned, are often pepperweed. It's a very aggressive plant. And, if you're curious, the tree species right out here in front of 2U are a redbud on that side and a Japanese maple on that one. And of course, there are the fireflies, which some folks around the country call lightning bugs. Climate action for our family is also experimenting with ways to eat more climate friendly. By the numbers, one of the most impactful things that almost everyone can do to cut our emissions is to eat less meat, especially less beef. So recently, my family has been learning how to cook tofu so we actually like it. The trick, we've realized, and maybe you all know this, is breaking the firm tofu into chunks by hand, coating it with olive oil and salt, and a lot of cornstarch, and roasting it, and then toss it in your sauce of choice, and it's pretty good. Climate action is also talking about it. Many climate scientists and advocates and activists have argued that talking is actually the most important climate action we can take as individuals. For me, talking about climate change does not actually come naturally, although my spouse, Paul, might disagree. While I teach and talk about climate and environmental issues a lot professionally, I don't often talk about these things in other places, like here at church. It's at the edge of my comfort zone, and as many of us would probably agree, it's just not fun to talk about. It's hard to talk about something that I care so deeply about, and something that I worry about so much that it occasionally brings me to tears when I'm rocking a child to sleep at night. But I know that by not talking about it as much as I should, it becomes all too easy to edge close to a place of despair. Despair is a wallowing, closing down, shutting out the love, isolating. But we are not alone in these feelings. Talking about climate change and climate emotions can actually be a way of feeling less alone. When I think back on our solstice firefly walk, I think about Noah's stubborn optimism that firefly would land on his stick. He didn't have my grown-up jadedness resulting in an inner dialogue of, that will never happen. I'm inspired by his 5-year-old's optimism, his love of nature and living things and desire to share that with others. This motivates me to work towards a better, brighter future for him, for Maya, for my college students, for all the world's children and living things, current and future generations.
Six months ago, I joined a conversation group for chaplains. They usually focused on a topic like palliative care or affinity groups, but we were to focus on climate change. We introduced ourselves by our pronouns, our theology, each as comfortable. We shared the names of Native nations whose lands on which we live. I now live on the land of the Potawatomi. And we identified where we live by river basins, except me. Where do I live? What waters receive the impact of my decisions as to what to pour down the sink or flush down the toilet? I can now name that I live in the Milwaukee River Basin. That means that the runoff down the hill of my backyard flows to the Kinnickinnic River, a tributary of the Milwaukee, and the water eventually flows into Lake Michigan, the source of my drinking water and of yours. I've now lived in Milwaukee for 2 years, moving there for a chaplaincy training when I finished seminary. And it was through Facebook that I really met Jess and recognized that some of what she was grappling with, both as a mother and teacher, were struggles that I was grappling with too, though from a different direction. In chaplaincy training, we hear didactics, lectures on topics, and while in a didactic on grief, I realized that I was experiencing reactions mentioned when I thought about the earth, as I lay on a beach void of shorebirds, when I walked by a river with boundaries prescribed by concrete, when I'm out at dusk in summer and not inundated by insects. Fossil fuel is not in itself a political subject. 30, 40 years ago in an environmental class, I still remember realizing tangibly that coal and petroleum oils are finite. It remains factual and not political that we extract the most accessible reserves first. Why not? They're easy to get to. But we have at this point gone through the easy to reach deposits. Their extraction becomes increasingly expensive, financially costly to reach, but also at greater cost and disproportionately to some people and wildlife and plants. With these realizations, I became aware that I had big feelings about the subject, and I averted my eyes. Though I avoided the weight I thought I was, it was still one that I carried. Each of us experiences loss and grief differently. My go-to form of grief is anticipatory grief, a feeling of loss before someone has moved or someone has passed away. For me, big feelings happened quickly, and I carried those feelings underneath the surface. And who was I thought, to mentally blame oil companies because I felt guilt for contributing to the drive for extractions? And so looking back, is it a coincidence that I eventually stopped driving, though there were other reasons? Or that I sought to limit my air travel? But I did fall into a thinking that our individual actions are the only places where solutions lie. For years, I was a vegetarian. My motivations were around land use. But 10 years into it, pregnant, I had complications that necessitated increasing my protein, and I began in limited ways to eat meat again. I had to look to myself to examine, as Jess has mentioned, the alignment between my actions and my values. I reluctantly began to eat fish and poultry occasionally. I worried about declining fish in the sea and how chicken and poultry are treated. I kept my fears to myself. I internalized them into depression over the fish, anxiety over the chickens, but my focus remained on what I personally could do differently. For my health, particularly when I discovered that I had a nickel allergy requiring me to severely restrict protein through nuts or seeds or legumes, I had to let go of my rigidity. I had to find grace for myself, to eat what my body needed, as those needs clashed with my urge to align my actions with my values. I recognize that dissonance within me. I appreciate why it feels uncomfortable, and I've come to a place of forgiving myself. Similarly, I choose to ride Amtrak, planning and taking extra time for actual travel, but I've also given myself permission ahead of time to take a plane if I need to be suddenly with ailing loved ones. We are humans. We can live as close to our values as we are able, and there will be times that others of our values are winning and appropriate. As individuals, we are the ones who navigate these complicated relationships, which means recognizing that other individuals are making the choices that they need to make. And in holding ourselves individually responsible, we also overlook the truth that government and corporations hold collective responsibilities on scales much greater than any of our daily actions. Some of us who are older may be feeling guilt over what we ourselves might have done better. But let's take care that other people, individuals, will be having their own reactions. Indigenous people know that they have lived through genocide, and so have already lived through an end of the world. If our ancestors have lived through enslavement or intentional epidemics, people who have lived through wars, this is not the first time people have lived through times that are bleak and overwhelming and come out on the other side. In chaplaincy training, much of our work is our awareness of ourselves. Our emotions, my emotions are mine, other reactions are theirs. Two of us may experience the same event, but depend on so much other context. What I experience as potentially traumatic may not be experienced by someone else as the same. The type of grief is my predisposition, is anticipatory grief. I shut down. I feel sorrow while grieving who is still with me, or what a place is still with me. While I use strategies to reduce my feelings, there they are. Suppressing them can get me through a moment, but it is not sustainable, creating more emotional complications. And for me, shutting down later. Feeling the grief early as I feel it frees me up. Disastrous events happen. I've already thought of them. That's my processing. And then I have a calmness. And I can respond with action. I'm less burdened by removing my weights along the way, moving through them rather than continuing to carry the full weight. We don't have to fear or avoid our feelings. When we feel grief, we are feeling in our bodies and experiencing emotions that are natural responses. Our hearts literally aching, feelings of emptiness. And how we process and move through these emotions will also vary. We may divert ourselves, avoid some of the feelings that we experience as too strong, but they are still our reactions to specific events. Healing may be a process that does not end, but changes. In talk of climate anxiety, there can be a tendency to pathologize or minimize our emotions. But here's the thing, Whether we feel anxious or discouraged or angry or sorrow, these are appropriate responses to events that are happening. These are normal reactions. There's not something wrong with us. Britt Ray in Generation, that's where my mind was, Generation Dread, Finding Purpose in an Age of Climate Anxiety, quotes Joanne Macy, saying, "Don't let people, therapists, or well-meaning friends try to explain it away in terms of your personal biography. It is a measure of your evolution. It is a measure of your humanity. It is a measure of your nobility that you have a heart-mind big enough to see and empathize with the outrage being inflicted on our world and all our relations. Mourning," says Britt, "is the cost of attachment." Grief is an embodiment of the extent of our love, and love is essential to our lives. Loving people, loving places. Our memories of sacred are pieces of our memories that can sustain us. I still have childhood memories of favorite trees, an oak tree in the front yard, a horseshoe chestnut at school, and I am aware that there are neighborhoods bereft of trees, that schoolyards are paved, that opportunities to engage with the natural world are informed by histories of racial and class segregation. And what if the loss is ongoing? Some of us may have experienced disproportionately ongoing loss. For me, this comes to mind the Ukrainian or Palestinian or Sudanese children who cannot go back to normal and try to experience the grief because the impacts are constant. Ongoing loss is complicated grieving, grieving without opportunity to heal as new traumatic events continue. And this is the case with the environment and other griefs that you may be experiencing, that there continue to be new sorrows. One antidote to grief is ritual. This is why they say memorial services or celebrations of life are for the living. We have the need to mark the significance of who and what we love in our lives. We have a need to feel sorrow together, to recognize the extent to which we love. In some cultures, including Diné and Maori culture, physical locations hold stories, senses of identity. Being separated from those places brings spiritual loss, a complicated loss, along with loss of lives, loss of social networks, sustaining food. It is not surprising that grief continues across generations. When familiarity is gripped away, rituals, Ray writes, gives us ways to mourn with dignity as we express our emotions in alignment with our deepest values, regardless of what the wider culture might say about the value of our pain. Importantly, standing with community in rituals cultivates resilience by allowing rage and anger, fed by injustice, to go somewhere outward so that it does not cause inward harm. By uniting in ritual, we become empowered to bring about cultural change. The future will not be what, for many of us, we first anticipated, but really, when has it ever been? Not just for our personal life trajectory, but the whole world's. The future has always been changed by the present. We do not know where our future will go. As UUs, we generally believe in a future that is not already written. In fact, not believing in literal hell, we are called to do what we can to make life better here on this earth. The future is ours to write. So today, the benediction will be something that we say together. There will be prompts on the screen that you will recite, and I will respond with some of the words that you've written here in the sanctuary that you may have included at the Admiral, and you may have written in chat. Here we go. Okay. So there will be a pause between each of.
Kim, want to sing a closing hymn?
Let's do the closing hymn.
So please rise in body and spirit and join me in singing hymn 163, For the Earth Forever Turning. Then we'll get to the responsive benediction.
I would like to share that if you are at the Admiral or on chat, I will be trying to join you briefly. And then about 15 minutes after the service closes, if there's anybody that would like to come to the sanctuary, we can hold space for each other.
We feel gratitude to the places.
We're going to start to
We feel gratitude for the places that we consider sacred.
Jackson County, Kentucky, Wisconsin winter snow, lakefront park, beaches and trails, redwoods. The human beings exploit and destroy the earth, receding beaches, longer summers, redwoods.
We may feel disappointment or anger.
When we notice denial, politicians that don't respect our earth, unjust burdens of externalities, and our parents or earlier generations who did not do enough.
We may feel sorrow.
For immense hurricanes, for floods, tornadoes, and wind shear, for injustice, for lives that are being harmed who are people who have contributed the least. fears. We can pause and know that our challenges have not arisen overnight and that we are running a marathon. Know that the earth is here for us with love and joy. Hearing about rewilding efforts by creative efforts to reimagine community when we are working together, when a piping plover shakes